Friends. The title of this forum, way back whenever it was, ARE set up the main forum, um, is about Christocentric friends. And the I was I had a lot of struggle coming to this. I've looked at it for the last month and not been able to bring myself to do what I thought the forum should be, which was maybe a historical overview and then a discussion of where we are today. Um, and I think it's because of something that happened, uh, not entirely, something that happened at a yearly meeting in our worship. A friend, a very old and waiting friend, shared shared a message, and the message was that back he'd had a conversation with a friend from Austin, who and I don't know who this was. A friend from Austin who said that they did not feel welcome as friends having more traditional Christian beliefs, and I I I'm I guess a lot of us are aware of that. As some of you may know, there actually was, I don't think they meet anymore, but there was a small group in Austin calling themselves the Christian Friends, who met apart, um, because they felt that their more traditional Christian viewpoints and beliefs needed a place in a friends worship setting. And so I'm wondering if this doesn't hark back to what happened, I think almost exactly 200 years ago. The Orthodox Hicksite split. And I also, as I was kind of working with this, working through this for myself, thought maybe what we could do today would be less of a discussion, less of a theological discussion. There's a very good little summary of all the different flavors of where Quakers could be on the Christocentric spectrum, all the way from non-theist all the way to very traditional, Christian and evangelical. There's a couple of discussions out there about that. But what I thought instead was that we could talk about how we as individual friends, and maybe as a meeting, but I think as individual friends, how we feel about traditional Christian beliefs and practices in the context of our meeting. And that sounds a little nebulous, so maybe I'll kick it off. And I can't see how many people are in the meeting house. It looks like we got 5. And then there's another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of us. So maybe what we'll have here is 12 mini spiritual journeys, around that. And let me kick it off just by showing you what I mean by that. I'll just tell you where I'm at. I believe that my basic belief system is that anything that advances the cause of loving kindness is okay. That's pretty much my belief system. I mean, that's what I would like it to be, and I talk about a lot of things. Some of them not having that in mind, but others do. And I use what a lot of people, a lot of the time, I use what a lot of people would think would be Christocentric language. I think a traditional believing Christian would hear me talk and would see through that and realize I'm not, a person who believes in the resurrection as something I have to believe in, who believes in the divinity of Jesus Christ, or the necessity of believing in that, the necessity of believing in anything. When I talk, I think, at least to people who do believe that, it's clear that that's not where I'm coming from. But I use a lot of that language, and I've always felt perfectly free to use that language, the language about the Bible, even about the resurrection, although I use those things, I guess, in my life as a form of poetry, that helps me get to other things. But I know that there are people, and I know we've had friends here, some who've been in very important parts of our meeting, who are very, very committed to the gospel of Jesus Christ. I can think of at least 3 friends, people who've been pillars of our meeting, who just, for reasons more of logistics, aren't with us at the moment, aren't with us anymore. I can think of, I hope it's okay to name, I think of Paul and Carol. Well, Paul, Carol is more, I think, a friend in our terms, but Paul, who to a large extent has gone back to a lot of his Mennonite roots in Columbia. I think of the Miller Moore family, especially Lodima, and those friends were in fellowship with us, and still are, or would be if they were around, and seem to be okay that they are what I would call traditionally Christocentric people, where we aren't. And but then there are other friends who have been with us and then have left because they didn't feel welcomed. And I'm wondering what the difference of that is. And I wonder how each of you takes that or feels about that. Do you feel comfortable talking with people, connecting with people spiritually who believe that it's, for instance, may think that it's necessary to believe that Jesus Christ died for your sins in order to be saved? How comfortable are you with, are we talking with people in a Quaker setting about that? I have to admit to feeling very ginger around that kind of discussion. And so I don't know where to land on that, and I think that's okay, but I think it's an ongoing question. So I'm going to open this up. So the query is, let me see, make sure I got it here. I had a good one. Well, so it's a query, and so the basic query is: do we accept? Do we feel that we accept in our community, or do we accept personally those who might have what are called more orthodox Christian views, and to accept them as friends? And how do we feel about talking with them about spiritual matters, especially if they have very strong traditional Christian beliefs? So that would be my query for all of us. If we could just go into silence on that, and then I'd like to hear what folks have to say. I see Renee has her hand raised already. Did you want to say something, Renee?
A little more silence first would be good, and then I'll speak out of the silence.
Okay, thank you. Just as you're led, Renee.
First of all, I take exception to the word "we." I'd like, if it's okay with everyone, to stick to the word "I" in here, because uh, I still have all the beliefs I grew up with as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them. And basically, what I believe is, and I do agree that um, the big thing that I got out of being one of Jehovah's Witnesses is that I can have a personal relationship with God at the times that I believe in God. And that's the deal. I don't always believe that there is a God. I'm very agnostic. Um, and so I have no problem with anyone's belief. And I actually can remember from that spot that I sit in the meeting house at the back against the rocks, looking around the room and thinking about however many different people there is equivalent to how many different beliefs there are and how many different ways people uh, come to God and come to religion. So what attracted me to Quakerism after uh, that initial meeting where they came in and they took Nikki and April away, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is heaven, because I'm not hearing mommy 50 times a day, was that I could take what I want and leave the rest and be with a group of people in spiritual connections, because there's so much in the Bible that's just a practical way to live. The laws that God gave the Jews, uh, a lot of those laws during the time were just practical ways to stay alive. Not back then, not eating pork, and a lot of the stuff that uh, God gave the Jews back then was just practical. And although a lot of that stuff is no longer relevant because of modernity. Um, so my point is, take what you want and leave the rest. And the big thing that I like to take is from the Bible, is the way we treat people and to uh, walk through life in love and out of love. And so whatever people need, and as far as the Great Flood and Immaculate Conception and all that other stuff, uh, anyone who wants to believe it, why not? Why not? Prove that it's not true. You know what I'm saying? So anyone can believe whatever they need to believe. And this is such a loving community that I hope that anyone could come in with whatever they needed and feel welcome. The deal with evangelism is that they feel like it's their duty to spread their word and that they feel an obligation. My only the only thing about that is if I expressed a wish to not have this discussion, that they would respect that. So I have no problem with people coming with whatever beliefs that they need in their own lives. And again, I'll say what my bottom line is: take what you want, or I take what I want and leave the rest.
I wanted to say something about the term. I hope this isn't splitting hairs too much, but I've never been comfortable with the term Christocentric, particularly because, as far as I know, it's not a word that pastoral, evangelical, or conservative friends would use to describe themselves. Maybe they do. I have never heard them even use the word. And so it becomes a word that we universalist types have invented for them. And in using it, sort of sets up an us and them kind of thing. That, and it sounds like a psychological term, like egocentric. You know, what's wrong with you? So I really, I mean, I understand the spirit in which the term is used in this discussion, but I just wanted to state that it's not one that I use. I had a pretty good relationship with many of the friends who called themselves the Christian Friends and went to the other meeting and eventually left the meeting and so on. And I think that some of them may have felt alienated, but others, such as I hesitate to speak for others, but I had long discussions of this with Marty Callahan. And I think Marty Marty felt that she was not really able to pursue the spiritual path that she felt was for her unless it was within a group that shared some common beliefs about Jesus Christ. So that's a little different from making them feel strange or different or outcast or anything like that. They just felt like they needed to have a different vehicle for their own spiritual expression. So I think when people kind of break off or say this meeting is not for me, we need to open our the possibilities up, that they may not be saying that we've done something awful or anything like that. They may simply be saying, you know, they just need another vehicle on the road to where they're going.
This is Paul. I have the honor and the honor of being, I think, probably the one person in this room who's known Lodima Miller longer than anyone here, including her husband. No, and her husband and maybe half her kids, because we went to art school together in Denver about it might be almost 30 years ago. Can you hear me okay? Can you like raise your hand if you can hear me okay? Okay, good. And she's not here today, so I can't really talk about any of the things we talked about back in those days, but I can clearly remember sitting in the back at the same table of Martin Mendelsberg's design class and meeting Lodima and talking to her through the semester, and then over about the next year, because she left school earlier than I did, but we kept in touch. Interestingly enough, and some of those talks were about religious issues and her background and mine. And I just think it's amazing the way we both ended up in Austin, because we didn't keep in touch that long after school. I mean, anyway, one of these days when we're sitting around a table in 3D, I'm going to reminisce, and Lodima is here with us. And that just seemed really significant to me. Oh, and we come from opposite ends of the spectrum in religious issues. That's it.
Thank you. This is Mary. 20 years before I ever went to a Quaker meeting, I was part of a Christian group that saw its work as demythologizing, as putting into everyday terms, what is a practical, what does this mean? What would you take a picture of if you were going to take a picture of this activity? And that has served me well ever since. My first clearness committee for membership was in Hong Kong, and there were 4 of us. And I distinctly remember one person saying to me, well, you were raised Southern Baptist. What do you think about being born again? And I had to stop for a minute. But my final answer was, yeah, I think it happens. And I think it needs to happen to all of us often.
something I've just noticed listening to everybody's descriptions of their interactions with friends who have more traditional Orthodox Christian views is that those were really interesting and intense conversations, and that they were really deep and powerful. That's actually something I really value about orthodoxy or the attempt at orthodoxy, is that there's a desire to know the truth and to have the truth and to speak it and to understand it, and a real concern of being wrong about that. And that if there is a real desire to seek the truth, then we should try to talk about it and figure out what that truth is, with each other. And I guess that's something I find sort of draws me to those questions of theology and religious doctrine. And so every now and then, I think it's nice when I've had a chance to lead a forum, maybe doing something on the resurrection or on something that is something that we have different views on. And I think there's a real value to really trying to, I mean, to the extent that we humanly can, to know the truth and to talk to each other and to try to figure out what the truth is. I think and that's something that Orthodoxy provokes, and I appreciate that they really want to be right, and they really want to try to help you be right too, and help everybody be right about this thing, because it's important. I think that's, yeah, I think we lose something of that seeking of truth, potentially, if we lose that seed, that fire of like, we want to try to be right and to try to understand what's happening in this world and try to help each other understand what's happening in this world. And if we just say, this is, hey, that works for you, like, that's okay. Like, you can think that, the zodiacs are controlling your mind or whatever, and it's, or it's some other loopy view, and then just that's working for you, then, there's something almost condescending about that, I find, really. I think it's worthwhile to really try to, I mean, in a way that's loving and respectful and non-coercive, to try to challenge each other a little bit. If we really, I mean, I hope you'll do that for me. If I am really off on something, perhaps even on this, that I hope one will try to help me on that.
Well, I was raised in the Lutheran Church, in a particular branch of the Lutheran Church that denied equal status for women, which irked me to no end. I did read the entire Bible one year when I was hospitalized for a long time with pneumonia. And the part that spoke to me most was not was Jesus when he said, I was naked and you gave me clothing, and I was poor and you gave me food. That section was meant a lot to me. Never really understood, sacrifice and dying, although that was very traditional in the Jewish tradition, and having sacrifice because of they thought that would, and I mean, it's in a number of primitive religions primitive. I shouldn't say primitive, but the Mayans also practice sacrifice. So it's not unique to this particular religion that that there's sacrifice involved. But that just never, I couldn't cope with that. What Mary said about about being born again kind of jives with me about continuing revelation, that each of us is learning all the time and trying to figure out where our path is, and our individual path, where my path is. That's a piece of Quakerism that really spoke to me, was it's not set in stone. There's always new learning to be had for everyone.
Well, if you can indulge me to stick my oar in just once more, as I've spent time with people of a more Christ-centered persuasion, let's say, not to say Christocentric, the thing that strikes me is what's important to them is their personal relationship with Christ the Savior. And the importance in the joy they feel in that personal relationship and the joy they feel in being able to share that with others who also share that belief. That kind of thing is just deeply important to them. And, I come to realize that, it's not enough to respect their belief or tolerate their belief or even to affirm their belief. That's all important. But they need that bit more. They need other people who share and understand, who can be with them in this love of what's to them a real personal entity. And they're different from me in that respect. And, sometimes, so that's why I understand why they sometimes have to be other places. I also, may be significant of nothing, but I remember the very time in which we had people from the Christian group, and the Christian group was meeting separately and so on. We also had non-theists who had their own group that met regularly. And it seems like all these folks drifted away. I used to kind of like to tickle the non-theist by saying, what is this theism of which you are non? Because I wasn't sure what the difference was. But, it just seemed like there was a period of time with us where these differences of belief were more important than they are now. And I'm kind of more comfortable with where we are now than then, though I wouldn't mind at all if all the non-theists and all the Christ believers showed up, because, I do value them and I miss them.
What comes to mind for me and my past relationship through the Episcopal Church upbringing and my journey away from that and eventually to Quaker meeting is that what is not present in the Quaker meeting are the very rituals and practices that were a part of the various Christian churches that I ever got to participate in, and that absence might be one thing that makes people feel less connected to their Christian spirit. And yet that's the very thing that opens the space for those who may not have grown up in that tradition or with that focus and belief. And so it seems to me that it is, if I can approach someone with a strong Christian belief with the same curiosity, interest, and intrigue as I approach somebody who has a Buddhist perspective or a Hindu or a Jewish perspective that I didn't grow up with, I can appreciate the power, energy, and value that it brings to that person, whether I see it in that light or not. And I find that it's sometimes harder for me to disassociate from my Christian past and be as sort of centered and fair-minded about that as I might be learning more about these other spiritual traditions. that I've encountered later on.
Okay, this is Renee again. I've got to take a quick double dip because I'm having a real problem with that word we. Okay. Because I personally am not exactly where every single one of you, everybody else is. So yeah, I'm having a real problem with, the assumption that I am exactly in the same place with every single one or everyone else. So that word is really giving me conniptions right now.
I pray to God, not to Jesus. But Jesus' life is important to me. And I think even God is really too small, that it's really something that is huge, but I just can't imagine it. So God is like an icon, like a computer. It's an icon on my computer that I can access a relationship. And I think that that's probably true for Christ-centered people. But I think we're going to the same devout place.
Well, friends, it's our traditional ending time for forum. I see it's about 10 minutes till the hour. I've got to say, for me, everyone who spoke my mind, if that's possible. I just want to thank Friends for a very rich and thoughtful experience this morning. And I will see all of you, or hopefully all of you, in worship